الصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين أما بعد سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل رب زدني علما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ومن الناس من يعجبك قوله في الحياة الدنيا ويشهد الله على ما في قلبه وهو ألد الخصام وإذا تولى سعى في الأرض ليفسد فيها ويهلك الحرث والنسل والله لا يحب الفساد وإذا قيل له اتق الله أخذته العزة بالإثم فحسبه جهنم ولبئس المهاد. ومن الناس من يشري نفسه ابتغاء مرضات الله والله رؤوف بالعباد. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So previously in the last verses we heard about the two categories of people who used to ask for Rabbana atina fid dunya, right? Give us in this world. And those who are, their focus is on the world and totally non-cognizant of the hereafter. And then you have the other group, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana. Give us what is good and beneficial, pleasing to you in this world and in the next. And what is pleasing to Allah, it will ultimately be pleasing to the human being as well, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want except what is good for us. So here it mentions two examples of these two categories. So وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ وَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. And there is among the people those who, because of their eloquence and the gift of speech, their eloquence impresses you in this worldly life. Of course, in the hereafter, it won't impress anyone. And they call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala witness, يُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ. And and this was perhaps referring to Al-Akhnas ibn Shaykh, who was a munafiq among the munafiqs of Medina. And he's called Al-Akhnas. Actually, his name was Ubay, and he's called Al-Akhnas min Khanas. Khanas means to pull back and withdraw. So actually, he was called that because in the Battle of Badr, he returned back with 300 of Bani Zuhra, and left and turned around and took off and fled and took back. And he had an excuse for that, but basically the whole issue was his nifaq. And so he used to swear to Nabi alayhi salatu, I'm a mu'min and I love you and I'm here for you, and he used to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, in reality he was munafiq, and then when he would argue here, Alladul Khasam, he was very arguative and argumentative and he was always in conflict. And not only that, when he turned away and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, opened the lid on his reality, so what he did, he, in the night, he went by some of the fields of the Ansar, burned up their crops and slaughtered their donkeys, right? And when he turns away, then he roams in the earth and moves around in the earth to create fasad, to create chaos and mischief and destruction. He destroys, harth, agriculture, and nasl. And in this case, it was donkeys or mules that were among the property of the Ansar. Wallahu la yuhibbul fasad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, doesn't like fasad. He is very unhappy with any type of mischief and chaos and destruction in the earth without right. And when it said to him, fear Allah in this matter, so what happens? His pride and arrogance grabs a hold of him. Arrogance and pride of the heart overpowers him, and in the context of sin, and so it would move him, as arrogance is the basis of all sin, just as we talked about Satan. That was the main issue. Arrogance was what prompted him to be what he became. فَحَسْبُهُ Jahannam. So sufficient for him is Jahannam. What a bi'sad mihad, and what a terrible resting place and end abode. However, so that's an example of who? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا. Those who only want the dunya. Then you have people who want the best of this world and the best of the next, particularly the next, as khayrun wa abqa, as we just heard in Surah Ala, better and more lasting. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ. And among the people you have another, the category of the second category, who sell themselves for the sake of the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu ra'ufun bil ibad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very kind and merciful to his slaves. Again, his slaves. And this is narrated in the books of tafsir regarding Sayyidina Suhaib al-Rumi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he left for hijrah. So on the way he was apprehended by a group of Quraysh. Now Suhaib was a very good archer, right, and a very good warrior. So he turned to them, he said, look, you know I'm a better archer than all of you, and as long as I have arrows, every one of these arrows is going to hit who I intend. And when I get done with arrows, I've got my sword, right? So who wants to die? Let him come. However, I'll give you a proposition. So if you like, you can cause your own demise. Otherwise, I'll tell you where all of my wealth is in Makkah, and you can have that. Just let me go. They said, okay, fine, right? So he told them, and they went, and then so when he got to Medina, so Nabi alayhi salatu said, Rabi halbay ya Aba Yahya, Rabi halbay ya Aba Yahya. He said, his son was probably, his son's name was Yahya. So he said, oh, father of Yahya, you made a great deal. It was a great and very profitable transaction that you made. Allahu Akbar. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has purchased from us our property and our persons in exchange for Jannah. Actually, it's like giving a kid, you give your son $10. Say, okay, give me give this miskeen $5 in sadaqah. So he thinks he's doing a great thing. Actually, he hasn't done anything. You gave him the money, and and you told him. So similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us our persons and our wealth and everything, and he says, okay, spend some of that in my way. So it's actually his in the first place. So some of us, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among them, realize that and do so. Sayyidina Suhaib gave a stunning example of the understanding of that ayat. And Mufassirin have mentioned other sacrifices of many other Sahabas who had similar types of sacrifices, and therefore when you see in the Quran it says يعني نزل في كذا وكذا, that this ayat revealed in a particular context. So it can, it could be directly for that particular context. It could also be many different events also come under that context. And in any case, as they say, al-ibra bi umum al-lafz la bi khusus as-sabab. So actually, anyone who falls under that category, it's a generality, even though there was a particular event that might have prompted that ayat, but it holds true for anyone who falls under that category, and that holds true for them. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among that second category, and but not give us a burden more than we can bear. Ameen thumma ameen wa akhir da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.